Hello everyone. Today I wanted to give my thoughts on Cyrene and specifically Phainon teams. Now I know, there's a lot of controversy about her and other teams as well. But I mostly care about Phainon here, and I feel like Phainon has probably the most anti-synergy with Cyrene, so it'd just be more fun to talk about. So, for those who know, obviously, Phainon does get one of the biggest buffs from Cyrene, and especially because it's an entire battle-long buff. Anoxa gets straight up the largest buff, like it's incredibly fucking broken. However, it's only for one instance, right? And Cassie, she does benefit from Cyrene for sure, because of the fact that you will almost always overcap by new bud by a little bit, right? And as well, you can use her as a sub DPS, as Evernight and Cassie's buffs are battle long, while only Hyacines isn't. But Hyacine will still get her poems about Sky, which increase her so-called healing value through Cyrene just using her attack. So basically you buff Cassie and Evernight once, and then you can use Cyrene as like a really strong sub DPS, probably stronger than Tribby, right? However, it's outside of, those two case scenarios where characters seem to really struggle trying to build up stacks for Cyrene, and this is probably the biggest issue in Phainon teams, right? Basically, the only Phainon team that could actually build up stacks, like 24 stacks for Cyrene's ultimate, is using RMC and Sustainless and action advancing Cyrene herself, which is, kind of questionable, right? Basically, you can get Phainon's ultimate way before you get Cyrene's ultimate. So Cyrene giving Phainon a free ultimate doesn't really do anything, and Cyrene giving Ceridra a free ultimate also doesn't really do anything if you already do the rotation correctly. Giving Don Hung a free ultimate also doesn't really do anything outside of a few attacks. It's very questionable, the ult regen, specifically in Phainon's team. However, outside of that, that is the only Sustainless team where you can actually build up Cyrene's ultimate before you die. Every other Sustainless team will simply die unless you have E6 Phainon and you just decide to YOLO it, or if you have E2 Cyrene, right? E2 Cyrene gives her half her stacks at the beginning of battle just for free, and it makes it a lot more easier. So yeah, Sustainless Phainon with under E2 Cyrene seems pretty cooked. There's also the issue that the ult regen isn't that big of a game changer for Phainon's team, at least, as you usually use Cyrene's ultimate when Phainon already had his ultimate to begin with. And then to make it even worse, because obviously she isn't really intended for Phainon's Sustainless teams, in Sustain, the ramp up time takes longer than an entire fucking cycle, right? So that is another big issue. And then there's also the other fact that Cyrene vertical investment is pretty trash for Phainon, because her E1 incentivizes using her memo skill hit that costs 12 recollection more often. However, she can basically never do this if Phainon is in an infinite ult, right? Her E2. To take full advantage of the true damage buff behind her E2, you need to buff every single teammate, but you can only buff 2. You can only buff 2, so you can't take advantage of the full true damage extra buff from the E2, which makes it a bit weaker. And then her S1 is also on some bullshit, because you get 10% vulnerability when you buff an ally, right? That's fine. However, you then get 16% crit damage if you use the hit that costs 12 recollection that Cyrene has. And if you have both of these at the same time, blank and verse, then you get 20% vulnerability and 32% crit damage. However, if you decide to use 12 recollection on a Sirene hit, then you can't buff Ceredra. It's, oh my god, man, right? Phainon has probably quite easily the most anti-synergy with Cyrene in the entirety of the fucking game. And so I'd say that, at least for now, right, if you're able to run Sustainless Phainon with like the Sunday comp and everything, and you are, you know, basically guaranteed to get 2 ultimates, right? This matters. 2 ultimates in Sustainless, I would not pull Cyrene right now, right? I'd say wait for a rerun, see if there's like way more HP inflation and all of a sudden infinite ultimate is needed, because otherwise I really don't think Cyrene is that crazy for a Phainon team, at least in my opinion, right? The buff, don't get me wrong, is absolutely huge. However, if you want to use a Lation MC going into the future, you're going to be forced to either pull her E2 to run Sustainless Phainon, or run Sustain, which is already a nerf for Phainon in the first place, right? So let me know what you guys think. Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. Peace out.